Gentlemen, welcome to another episode of the Be the Man podcast. Today, my guest is Jared Rowley, and super excited here. We were just talking before we hit the recording about business, about family, about education. There's gonna be a lot of nuggets here, a lot of awesome. So, Jared, grateful to have you here, brother. Why don't you just give us a bit of background and your story, and we'll get started.
All right. I'm grateful to be here. Thank you. This sounds like a great group, and I enjoy following you and seeing the stuff that you talk about, definitely. So I'm excited to be on here. My story. So for me, kind of what where I start with it always is in high school. I loved surfing, snowboarding, skating. That's kind of what I grew up doing, and that was all very important to me. I defined myself by, how good I was at those sports. That was kind of what I felt like, oh yeah, I'm cool. I've got value here, whatever, stuff like that. And so I put it all on the line for that. And that included my high school education. I was just focused on chasing the fun and the things that I felt like mattered. And high school was not one of that. Education was not one of those things. And so it was interesting. I grew up and I remember thinking like, oh, I want to care about learning, but didn't really know anything about it. In my high school, I did not support that very much. So I remember one time I was on the lift going up snowboarding, and I was like, I want to learn more about philosophy. I'd just watched some movie that talked about it and seemed interesting. So I remember thinking like, what is the meaning of life? Like I was alone on the lift and it was snowing and I'm going up and I'm just like, what is the meaning of life?
Awesome.
Like sitting there trying to think about it. And I grew up, I'm a member of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. So, obviously my mind goes to all that first, but that lasted, like the amount that I knew to ponder on lasted for about 5 seconds as I was going up. And then it was like empty, nothing else. I didn't understand anything with it. So time goes on. I did horribly in high school. I graduated right before I went on a mission for my church, and right before I went on my mission, I graduated. So it was like a year and a half late. So I barely graduated, and I had to do like a lot of extra things to get out of high school and to finish it. Went on my mission, and there I started to get into like ideas, right? Like you go out into the world and you start talking with people and hearing all kinds of different ideas, and that was a really cool thing for me.
Exposure.
But it was
like exposure.
Exactly.
That's it. It's such a critical element that you
Yeah.
go out and in this case, you're like, look, I want to go serve people. So because you have this drive to get out, it's now you put yourself in a place to get exposed, and exposure just lights a fire.
Well, exposure, the thing that's interesting about exposure, it does two things for you. It inspires you, and that's one thing that's really cool. And the second thing that I experienced was challenge, right? And so, and I like that. It was fun to be challenged on the ideas that I was out there to share, because it helped me fine tune the things that I believed and the things that where I didn't realize, oh, I'm wrong here, or oh, I'm right here, and I'm going to fine tune that and create a stronger understanding for the idea. So that's what exposure did for me on my mission. It was really cool.
And
I came home. I served in Little Rock, Arkansas, and so in the South, Mississippi, Missouri, Tennessee, Arkansas. And so I came home, and I loved learning about church topics, religious topics, and that was kind of the extent of where my learning went. But I'd buy a lot of books and read it, but it had kind of lit a fire in me about learning. But it was only in this narrow field, because that was the only one where I had any experience or anything like that. And so back to college.
If I might jump in, this is really cool. I think there's little principles here that are so exciting.
Yeah, I love it.
It sparked a fire in that thing, right? The exposure and the experience of it, and wanting to learn about it, wanting to share it, being challenged. Because I went through a very similar experience, and I've done this, and probably you have too now. Well, we'll get there with business or whatever, with marketing. Like, how do I figure this out?
Yeah.
And then it lights a fire, and you go into that thing.
Yeah.
And so you're right. There's a fire, and it's a narrow field, but now the love of learning is there, and it's happening.
Yeah, that was well, and the thing that was interesting is it was narrow at that point, just into religious topics. But you're right, like um there it I learned to be curious was what was interesting on my mission. Is there was that idea of being curious was one that became very important to me. Also, like novelty, I've realized is something important, that we all respond to novelty, and it can be for our good or for our bad, right? Learning is always about finding new novel things that you didn't know before, but so is jumping out of airplane, or like that's not like that's a bad thing, but like you can take things to their extreme in another way, where you're looking for a novel thing, and that leads to drug abuse or different things like that, where it's like I want the next most intense thing I can. And so it was interesting to learn how to get the same like excitement that I did when I landed a crazy trick on a snowboard from learning some new idea, a new novel idea. I'm like, whoa, this is amazing, and so novelty was the other thing that started to open up in a good way for me, and I started to learn to use it in a good way.
I'm so glad you just bridged that.
Oh yeah,
reward you get from snowboarding, skateboarding, something cool, and then learning something.
Yeah,
it can translate. You can cross that, you can bridge that. And I've experienced the same thing, where I was very physical, an adrenaline.
Yeah, absolutely.
I'm like, I find the highest
exactly
cliff
right.
or bridge to jump off. Now I'm the same. Like I grab a leather book and I'm sitting here in my office and I'm like, what? He said this in the 1500s? Like,
yeah.
and I have that same experience.
Well, okay, and why I get that experience is part of the next part of like kind of my narrative. So what made it so that I was able to get that experience is really interesting to me, and it's something I've thought about a lot. So I went back to college after my mission and did not do well, right? Like I thought that I'm like all excited about life, and I remember like talking to my grandpa, who was a dentist, and being like, I want to be a doctor, and these types of things. And just what I wanted was to be engaged with life, and I felt like there were these certain types of people who were engaged with life, and I wanted to be that. So I come home and start studying that. I'm like, I hate this. This is not for me. It is for some people, and some people thrive in it, and that curiosity is ignited for them in that, and they chase that, and they get novelty and all the things from being a doctor. I didn't get that, and so my grades, same thing in college. Got put on academic probation, totally failed. Ended up just going snowboarding all the time. I was up in Utah. And it wasn't until I got married that my wife and I found this small liberal arts school that we went to. It wasn't accredited. It was just like someone, a family member was going there, and they were talking to us about it, and it just excitement. Like I was overcome with this idea of like, I need to be there. They talked about reading the classics and going into class and debating with each other, and just all these ideas. It was exciting to me. It was kind of what I imagined that day on the snowboard lift. Like, I want to understand, like philosophy, right? I want to know how to do this, but I didn't know how. And so this spoke to me. So we go down to the liberal arts school and start going there, and it was exactly what I hoped for. The first day we go in, we'd been reading Plato's Republic, which was hard for me. I remember sitting down. We had mentors, is how it was structured, was with mentors. And I sat down with my mentor and I was like, I'm struggling with this book. Like, you asked me, where a talk was in the Journal of Discourses, I can give you the page number, what page, like where a quote was on the page, all of it. I know it well. Just the ideas in this religious arena, but I do not. I'm struggling to understand this and to be able to remember it or understand why it matters at all. And my mentor just said, "Give it time." Was his answer, and it is like but he said, "Just keep going, and give it time." So we go into class the first day, and he asks the question, "What is justice?" And for 3 hours, we didn't move on from that question, that one question we spent 3 hours talking about and debating and discussing. And it was invigorating to hear and I thought I gave my answer right off the bat. I think I may have been the first one to give my answer. And I just thought, okay, this is obvious, next, and it was kind of like I was used to how it was in college. Like,
Right.
you give the right answer and then you move on to the next question. So I gave the right answer and then we moved on. I thought we were going to move on to the next question. And my mentor said, interesting. Does anyone else agree with that? Or what do you all think about that? And all these other ideas of justice started popping up. I'm like, what? No, and so then I started defending my idea, and that conflict again, right? Not that conflict is not bad, contention is bad, or not something that we should seek, but conflict is good, right? The opposition helps you fine tune your idea. And so that was my first experience outside of religion that kind of lit that fire. And from there, it made it so that I was able to, the model, that's what was interesting, is it showed me with just religion, I didn't really understand the model. That day, that friction, just like starting a fire, right? You take something and you create the friction and a coal starts, and then you can, from that coal, you're able to fan it and give it more fuel, and it grows into a big fire. And so that friction that day was like, this is how it works, and it helped me understand a why. Like, why do we need to be learning? Why do these ideas matter? That school gave me that why. I was there for 2 years, I think, in whole. And when I came out, I'd read all kinds of classics, been exposed to all kinds of ideas, and my mentor was right? Like, it took about 3 months before I started remembering sections in books, but it's because now I had a schema that I was building on, right? It took a little while for me to start to build a structure that I could hang ideas on and pull ideas off of and start cutting them down. But that happened.
It's generally like 100 books later. And then
Yeah.
okay, now I'm connecting
Yeah.
dots.
And a lot of discussions. And so, and that may have been just me personally. I don't know if this happens for everyone, because I do well, like my personality type does well with discussion. And I know that not everyone does that, or thinks that way. But for me, that was a big thing. Discussion really helped light that fire.
So let me do, I want to ask a question with your life experience now. So look, you said it gave you kind of a why. You begin to understand like why we need to have that kind of education, why we need to have the conflict. So now jump ahead to today and the experiences you've had over the last 20 years. Give us your, what was you, now looking back, even more clarity around the why. Like why a classical education? Why an education? Like, is it really relevant? Because people are asking that. It seems crazy to me, but people are really asking, like, why read those books? Why have those debates? Like, what does that have to do with me and raising a family and running a business?
Okay, I love it. So why? A few reasons why. The deepest reason, I think, is to connect with goodness. I used to be obsessed with truth, and I still think that it's such an important thing and it's something that we need to find. But I think that now I'm much more interested in goodness. What is good, and how do I bring the most goodness into my life that I can find?
Well, what's interesting, Jared, sorry to interrupt here. Like, a lot of the classics are introducing you to like messed up stories.
Exactly.
Stuff. So I love to hear you say that. It's like introduction to goodness, but part of finding and seeking the goodness is reading some of these great classics that are really disturbing and depressing.
That's exactly right. And the reason that I think that both, so I'm not into broken books, but I am into ones that that are help give clarity, right? Like not all books give clarity. Some of them glorify things that are not good, and I don't love that, right? But other books show the ends of badness, and that is a very good book to read. Right now, my son is reading Hunger Games.
Yep.
And it's kind of lighting that same fire for him, where he just wants to come over and talk to me a lot about, like, wait, the government is doing this in the book, like, what the heck, and he's like wanting to talk about that. And he's seeing this is the end of an unchecked government, where there's not freedom, where that is not a value that they have, and it's lighting that fire. And so there's a difference there, right, between goodness and that Dostoevsky talks a lot about how our childhood memories can save us, right? That was something that he believed mattered, is that our childhood memories had the power to save us. And the reason that I think that is because we are exposed to goodness, right, in that period, and those things that we hold on to, the nostalgia of it. Memories have the power to give us a reason to keep going and to keep fighting. And I think that books have that same power, to help us be exposed to the things that are good in this world and that are worth fighting for. There is evil, there is darkness, but there's also light and beauty and goodness, and that's what we're here trying to maximize as much of it as we can get. And so yeah, that's part of my why. For if I were to say why I'm doing what I'm doing right now, it's that. And a lot of it comes back to that. I love farming, I love reading, I love art, I love, all these different things, and it comes back to that gives life. And light is just connecting with good things.
Yes. And have you felt like since that time, have you kept up a pretty good learning schedule? Do you read regularly? Has it been a part of your routine and your
lifestyle? Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I read every morning. I read for about 2 hours in the morning, and then yeah, and then just all throughout the day I'm reading or consuming, like lectures or stuff like that while I'm driving, that I feel like are contributing to my learning. And so
and we're going to get into this, but you're in a very different stage of business and life right now that gives you that time freedom.
Yeah.
When you guys were in the deep of building the business, were you still reading when it was busy?
Yeah.
How many children do you have?
We've got 4 kids. Yeah. And so I'm not good at like saying, here's this goal, like I'm gonna execute on that, and like I can cut everything else out and not think about it. I don't do well with that. And so for me, what works well with accomplishing something is piggybacking, right? An idea, the idea of piggybacking onto habits that you already have.
Yep.
And so I find things that I'm already doing, and then I piggyback something that I want to include in my life onto that. So every day I go to the bathroom, and every day I take a bath. Like that was something I was already doing no matter what. And so I read on those times, right? And that's where I would get, I sit in the bath, and my wife at first like, what in the heck? But now it's just like, I think she sees like, oh, this is awesome. You're learning and you're growing. And I take it really seriously. I have like a table that goes across my bathtub.
Awesome.
And I just sit in there and I read all day, and not all day, I'll read for like 40 minutes in the bathtub. But I'm taking notes, and like it's something that I take really seriously. I'm like an engaged learner in there, but it's just piggybacking on something that I was already going to do. So kind of unconventional, but Alan Greenspan,
such a unique one. I love it.
Yeah, Alan Greenspan. I was reading his book that he had, and he talked about how the bath was like the most important thing for him. And Winston Churchill both really like loved their baths for their study time. I was like, interesting, okay. And so then I started doing, I'm like, yes, I am all in. Awesome. I get it.
Love it.
But anyway, so yeah, I would read about 2 hours a day, and then even then I would do it, right? And it was because I piggybacked it on things that I was already doing anyways. And I get up pretty early. Like I generally get up around 5:30, and so that makes it so that it's not like a huge burden on the family, the fact that I'm in the bath for 40 minutes or whatever.
That's why that's why I started getting up. Well, I was already getting up early, but why I maintained it when we started having children. I was like, if I'm going to keep learning, keep working on me without taking away from family, I got to get up early.
I want to be as much of an equal partner as I can. And if I'm in the bath and like chaos is happening outside, I feel really bad. Like I'm not being an equal partner as I should be, you know? And so that's been helpful.
Good. Beautiful.
To get up early.
Let's go. You guys, you got married, went to university. Now kind of lead into the family and business.
Yeah, great. So that taught me that I love learning and how to take the process of learning into other arenas, right? And I fixed up my education, went back and fixed up my grades, went to the U, ended up working with 2 senators there. I was a ghostwriter for one and then a researcher for the other. And then I was planning to go do a JD MBA, is kind of where the next story comes in. Planning to go do a JD MBA, just finished school, was applying to all the others. And I had this great internship lined up in the DC law firm. And we were getting ready to go out there. And I felt a strong prompting not to go. By that point, Elle, my wife, we had 2 of our kids. One of them, our oldest, is Lucy, and our baby at the time was named Solomon. And we were broke students, and so we didn't have any money for a baby carrier for Solomon. And so Elle found a way to make a carrier for him, a wrap style baby carrier that you wrap around and tie it off with a long piece of fabric. And she made it, and her friends said, "Hey, that's nice. That's a lot more breathable than the other ones that are on the market right now. Could you make us one?" So she made them one, and then it grew from there, right? And so that is, she'd been doing that for a few months by the time I was getting ready to go to school, and I just felt like I was not supposed to go to school. We were going to take on a lot of the schools we were applying to would have been about $250,000 of debt. And Elle, had this little startup going. That was my point for doing a JD MBA, was to go work with startups. I wanted to do that. And Elle already had this startup. So it was like, what are we doing? Let's do this, So after we left the college, I started working with another startup for a little bit, but by that point, Solly Baby had started to take off. And so Elle said, come on in here, let's do this together here. The other one was not making any money.
And early on, were you getting into the internet sales? Was it word of mouth? How were you launching back then?
Yeah, that's been my favorite part. It was before Instagram existed. Let's see here. It was not before Instagram existed, but Instagram was very, very, very new. So everyone was just using it to post their pictures and kind of feeling it out, treating it like another Facebook at the time still, basically, but it was, and so how we got it started was, and I love this part of the business process, right? I treat business like Sherlock Holmes is very much how I feel like business is where the business model reveals itself to you and you go and it's trial and error, right? And so you're trying to find the evidences that justify the business model.
Wow.
And so
I love that. That's such a different perspective.
Oh yeah, no, it's fun. I love that part of it. And so what we did was we went to these big trade shows, and everyone's like, oh yeah, we paid $5,000 or whatever to go to them, and they're like, you'll make 25, 30, whatever off of this. So we sat there and we're making all these wraps. I was finishing up one of my classes because she'd been doing it for a few months while I was in school. We had family come and help, all this to try and get enough wraps made for how much they were going to sell. We thought, we go to the trade show and no one buys them. And we could not give them away fast enough. No one would buy it. Not fast enough. We couldn't even give them away is what I mean. So we do, that was a failure, right? And it felt like, oh, this business, maybe there isn't something here.
Disappointing.
Yeah, I don't think we even covered our expenses of what it costs to get in there. And so that was a really sad, kind of a defeat, right? It felt like, but then Elle had this idea, her blog, she was doing like a little blog that she would post just cool stuff on there, like sewing patterns and stuff like that, or life experiences. She's a really gifted writer. And so she just was writing. And she had a little bit of a following, not much, but people were buying from there. And she's like, interesting, people are starting to buy from here. And then we had someone who had a bigger social media following. They weren't called influencers or anything back then, but she wanted to wear one of the wraps, and so she wore one, and we got 140 orders that night, and we're like, whoa, okay, there's something here. And so then we started following that, and we started to get more. That's when the business model started to reveal itself, is people were following Elle on Instagram like crazy, just for the business. And so then we're like, oh, we maybe should make a business Instagram account. Like, it all started to become clear what was supposed to be happening as we followed just little evidences and trial and error, right? Like, the trade shows, not so great for our business, or but this is really working. Let's follow this. There's action here. There's things happening. And so we started following that, and it just took off like crazy. It was really cool.
I want to dig a little bit deeper into that, because the trial and error process can be so discouraging, wasteful. Like, you time and effort. Like, I think your story is so perfect, where you have to pay the money to get in, plus go through this Herculean effort to get all the wraps ready, because it's gonna be a killer show, and then boom, right?
Yeah.
How did you guys keep a vision? How did you keep driving in the trial and error and making the mistakes, trying to figure it out? I love the Sherlock Holmes approach. You're going to have some misses.
Yeah. So what we did early on, we read the book Mean Startup, and that was a book that was really important. And in that book, it's more geared towards a tech company, but the idea is to fail fast, right? And it talks about the idea of a minimum viable product. And so that really rung true to us. And we used that. We viewed our company as a marketing company, right? Like, the product, all that, the backside was not as big of a deal. But if you're not selling it, my dad always says, nothing happens till someone sells something. And so we were always testing, like, how to, what can we be doing to grow the marketing and to get more sales coming in like that. And so we would try and do the minimum viable product. So things that were not going to break the bank, right? We wanted things that were small but would prove a concept, and then it would validate the idea, and then we would start to scale it. So we just are always doing little things like that. We heard the saying, I'm willing to risk the coat off my back, but not the shirt, right? And so that was really important to us, to not like go mortgage our home so that we could pour all of our money into digital marketing or something like that, whereas like, we don't even know if digital marketing works for us yet, like, that's not a smart risk. And so we tried to have very educated risks that we would take, and it was small things, and we'd say, I wonder what would happen if we went with this kind of influencer, let's test that out and give a free one to them, and see what happens in that category, if it resonates with people or not. And if it does, it's like, cool, let's give them to 100 influencers in that area and see what happens. Then it does well. It's like, great, let's pay $25,000 for one post from someone in that category, and we'd slowly start to scale it up like that after testing small things. And we just tried to do that with all the different areas of the business.
Oh, that's so insightful. Well, again, going back to the story, had you guys think, we're gonna mortgage everything and hit every trade show in the country?
Exactly. It would have been a huge fail, and we would have lost everything for nothing.
Exactly.
And so it feels obvious, but it wasn't obvious to us at first, right? Like, that's the thing now is, so to fast forward a little bit more, and you can pull us back if you want. So we grew Solly Baby was the name of the company. We grew it to the point where a private equity fund was interested in buying us, and we sold it to a private equity fund and started up again, with the idea of testing, we along the way had helped a lot of other companies start and grow. And they would ask us to invest and we never did. And then they would get these huge valuations later. And we're like, oh, we should have invested. And so we invested in one company because I thought I would like being an investor, right? And I love that side of it, like the thinking, the problem solving, and that side of the business. And so we invested with one little company and it worked well. And so then after we sold Solly Baby, we started a venture capital fund. And that's what I do now full time, is just work here, and we invest in companies, and we're very hands-on and help them grow. But it's the same stuff. We just do this over and over, like finding the little things that work, and testing it where the stakes are low and scaling it.
Fantastic. And when you say full-time, are you working 40, 50, 60 hours a week, or
No,
that's what you do as your predominant?
that's what I do. Yeah. So what, Elle and I, when we were in Solly Baby, and this might be interesting to people who are running business with a family member, right? Because we invest in family-owned direct consumer businesses, because we could never find any venture capital that would let us live the life that we wanted to be living. They expect you to be like, wait, why are you not working 80 hours a week, both of you? Yeah. Like, I don't care that you're moving, or I don't care that your family is doing this or that. We expect this, and so we never took on investment. But when we were in our business together, we would work, both of us, half the days of the week, right? So then it made it so I was able to be with my family a lot. Elle was able to be with the family a lot, but we were still both working and growing and doing something together. It very much made it so that we're on the same team, right? We have this thing that we're working together towards, and it was just very exciting, and it created that a sense of unity. Sometimes a sense of opposition, right? Like I could be really annoying. Elle would do a post, and that's the hard thing, right? The man in the arena idea. She's the one like really out there doing. No one ever knew I was in the business, even. I was like very much behind the scenes. And she would be out posting or doing something, and then I'd be like, oh, why did you do this? You should have done this. And she's like, but you're right, that would have been good, but it's too late now. And that would create friction with stuff like that. But we learned to work together, and it was a huge blessing for us.
Did you guys find a way to take on roles and responsibilities? Did you split responsibilities, or did you share? How did it work out for you?
That was an important lesson that we learned, is splitting the responsibilities. And so, we did do that. That made a big difference for us. But we still would talk about stuff together around, like, I always have been interested in the marketing side, but she's, very gifted writer, and just very tuned into the demographic of Solly Baby. And so it didn't make sense for me to be in that arena at all. But so we would talk about it, but it was like, no, this is her thing, and so we tried to keep the roles very defined in that way.
So, man, and that's how Rachel and I know that this is what you have. What we have is unique. Rachel and I work in our business together. We love it. We both office, and we figured out a way to manage it, to raise a family, and we travel all over the world as well, and still run the businesses. And it ended up working out beautifully. I love how you guys said that you divided time so that you're both getting time with the kids and in the business.
Yeah, and that's been an important thing. The other day, we went to In-N-Out, and I went just alone and made the order for everyone, and got back, and one of our kids had switched their order recently, like, oh, good, you remembered that I don't want pickles on it anymore, or whatever, And for some reason, that made me feel really like proud. Like, I am involved enough that I know the little nuances of the orders that you guys like when you go out to eat. That's important to me, is to be involved with the kids. And so with the companies that we invest in, and with all of our things that we do, we try and have it where we preserve time for the family. That's a very, very important part for us.
That is awesome, man. Very Way to go. I don't know you weren't looking for this, but kudos, kudos to you guys for taking what works for you, what was important to you, and starting a new business, a new fund on those same principles. Empowering people to say, hey, you can still succeed in business while succeeding in family.
Yeah. And that's the huge part of it for us. That's like kind of our governing principle for both Elle and I. Like, if we had a mission in life, it would be to empower families. Like, we believe, like, a very deep belief that world peace begins at home, right? Like, back to that Dostoevsky idea, the childhood memories grow and develop into adults who are living out those childhood memories and either hurt people, or or they've had a lot of good experiences and mentors and their parents that have helped them grow and to do good things. And so what happens at home very much impacts the world. And so we try and empower as many families as we can. And our belief is, if these business owners have strong families and we help them have good incomes, they're able to have more impact on the world as well. And so that's a really exciting thing for us.
That's so awesome. Is Elle still involved in some of this? Does she like to participate in it?
Yeah, so it's
together?
interesting. She does. Yeah, she comes in and participates in this. Solly Baby was very much her thing, and I was in that, like, the supportive role in that and helping with the different stuff. And I think that this is more my dream, and she comes in and supports with it as well. She works with the companies and helps with the branding and, brings all of her amazing insights. But what she's really wanting right now is, kind of like the tide comes in and out, is kind of how life feels sometimes. And so what the ending when we sold Solly Baby is like, okay, that's the end of this. And she's kind of entered into this phase now where it's like, I don't have clarity around what is next for me. And it's interesting. I don't know how much this is a tangent, but it's very core to a lot of the things that I believe and feel. So I'm going to go into it.
Go for it.
Is this idea of narratives, like narrative psychology, is something that's very interesting to me, right? And so it's all rooted in Jungian ideas around archetypes and stories.
Yes.
And I think that we're governed by that. Our minds are. And so for Elle, she came to the end of this narrative, right? Like, she sold it, and now she's on the threshold of a transition, right? And so you move from that threshold into the unknown again. And this is a period where she does not know what's next. And in that, it feels chaotic, right? And that's exciting, though, because chaos is where all creation happens, right? It's why chaos is the idea of the feminine is chaos, right? Like, it's why that's the feminine, it's where creation occurs, And so from there, so that's where she's at right now, is she's still working with me doing this, but she's in this phase where it's like, what's next? I don't know. And stepping into the unknown. And it's like, I always get so excited watching any family member do it, the kids or Elle or anything. It's like, it's brave and it's so cool. And when you're willing to sit in that area for a while, then you get clarity around the next thing, right? Then the creation happens. And just like that acorn, right? It is this thing, but it cracks open, and you've got a lot of growth from it. And you have to sit in that chaos for a little while and not know what's happening before you can crack it open and have that growth. And so that's where she's at right now. And she's doing this with me because she's good at it and she loves all the people that we work with, but it's not her passion like it is mine. It is because it's tied to families, but she's working to get that next thing right now, and she's sitting in that, and it's really cool. And so,
actually,
yeah,
love that.
Oh, it's the best.
No, at first, you want to avoid it. It's uncomfortable. There's a lot of fear, uncertainty. But man, I've gotten to this place, and it manifests in every area of my life. Like, I tell my wife or people sometimes, I'm like, you know what my favorite thing would be is like you guys blindfold me, put me to sleep, and then I wake up in an unknown land in some unknown city and have to like
Yeah.
find my way out or whatever, or do all these
Yeah.
things. I just like put me somewhere where I have no idea what's happening and don't speak a language. Like, let's figure this out. I love the
Yeah.
adventure piece of it. So that's cool that you guys are in that space and just sitting with it to see what comes next. And what's really fascinating, this comes up every week, if not every day. And when I'm coaching, is that so many people are in this space where when you're young, you're like, I'm gonna, maybe get a degree or whatever, get a career, start a family, do those things. And we have these big, big goals, but they all seem to end in the 30s or 40s.
Yeah. Yeah, that's right.
People get there and they're like, hey, I checked all the boxes, I hit all things, wow. And then it's this big, now what? So what you're talking about is super relevant.
No, and I think that's like, the now what is something that's really important, for this phase. As I got closer to my 40s, I'm like, okay, I'm interested now. Like I can see how that midlife crisis happens. And so I started learning about it. And there is an author, who, after Carl Jung, his writings were all very dense and confusing. And one of his students, Marie-Louise von Franz, she kind of is known for taking what he had and making it palatable to the masses, and is kind of, people view her as responsible for making it mainstream. She wrote a book called Puer Aeternus, which is the idea of the eternal child. And in it, she talks about how when we're on one, like while we're growing up, we're developing our ego, right? Or the things, our identity. And the first 40 years is very much that, like, who am I? What am I good at? And you strengthen those strengths, right? And then Jung believed that after that, you need to start developing your shadow self, right? Like you need to start tapping more into your shadow, your unconscious, to become an individuated whole person. And so that you need to start going outside of your shadow, and if you are outside of your ego and the things that you're good at, and start tapping into the things that you are not coming as natural to you. And there's a lot of excitement and growth in that because it's new, it's things that you're not good at. It's that same sense of adventure in that.
There's a lot of discomfort in that. A lot of discomfort.
Well, absolutely, because like, for example, I'm very great at the phase that you're talking about, right? Like the stepping into the dark and the chaos and the creativity. That's a strength for me, for sure. I love brainstorming. I love like that side of it. But what's interesting is once it comes to systematizing, I can come up with great systems too, right? But when it comes to the executing the systems, I struggle doing the same thing over and over and over. And so
same here, brother.
that's my shadow self though, right? Like, and so I started to research how to do that better, and Jung believed that you need to do it in play, right? And so for me, with my personality type, the MBTI personality type, I'm an ENFP. And so Myers-Briggs was based off of Jungian type theory, and they built this out as a way to understand what type you are, right? And so I started looking with one of my friends who's I think you've met, Mark, and he's very, very good with the Myers-Briggs. And we started like playing with it one day on our chalkboard here at the office, and we're like, how can you develop, like, what does an ENFP need to develop their weak things of being basically detail oriented, right? Like, how do you do that? And as we started talking about that, and I started reading the different things from Marie-Louise von Franz and Jung, it became apparent it has to be play-based. It has to be things that are no consequences. It has to be play, but it has to be the stuff that you hate. So for me, it's how do you have something that's repetitive that is also play-based, right? It feels like they don't go together. And so what I came up with, I love our yard and gardening, all that stuff. In the Lord of the Rings, where it talks about the hobbits loving things that grow, that's like, I was like, thank you. That really speaks to me. as like a goodness type thing, right? And so what I realized is I'm going to go out and play in the garden. Right now, I'm just like, oh, that plant needs water or whatever, and I go out and just enjoy pruning it. And so I made a really intense system of how to manage our yard and our garden. And I've worked really hard. I've been trying to stick to that as best I can, because that is my play-based version of my shadow self, right? That is me learning to become more detail oriented with something that is low stakes.
Beautiful. And creating and maintaining a system,
Yeah.
a strategic system, and something you love and are passionate about. That's
Yeah.
I love it.
Yep.
And
Yeah.
did you guys get a big chunk of land?
Yeah, we've got about 3 acres. So not like a huge chunk, but big enough to have a tractor. That's all we needed. But yeah, so we have a big garden now. Our goal is to live off of 50 or have 50% of what we eat be from the garden, or from something we created, we grew or raised the meat for it or something like that. So 50% of what we consume.
I wanted to ask that. You have animals as well? Are you doing a greenhouse? You doing
Yeah, we've got a big garden. We do garden boxes, and then like an orchard area that we've got, and just a lot of berry plants, stuff like that. We've raised chickens and slaughtered them and ate those. Right now, we don't have any other livestock. We're getting 2 cows, or we're on the wait list for 2 cows. But yeah, so yeah, well, they're the Highlander cows, you know, the long-haired cows
awesome.
that are really cool.
Awesome. My family loves those.
And so they're really like popular right now, and so there's a wait list for those. But their milk is supposed to be very creamy and like nutrient rich, is kind of what they're known for. And their meat is supposed to be really some of the best. Like it became very expensive after they bred them, because it's a very, very good beef. And so that you know, it makes sense that they're cool. But anyway, so yeah, that was kind of my answer to tapping into that shadow self. So along the same process, Elle's in that darkness right now, and for me, my darkness is not chaos, it's order. And so that's my shadow self, is learning how to tap into order more, and become a more whole person by being able to live in chaos and in order well, and thrive in both of them.
Love it. Can I this is a good, I think, good point to maybe jump back to kind of the waves, the oscillations. How did it change you guys to go, because you started the business and were bootstrapping, and you never took on investors, right? And then you built it. The business was doing very well, so you're getting regular incomes. How did it change you to go from well, you grew into the business, right? You had to grow with it into the business, but then when you got a buyout, right? How did that change you? How did it change your family to then have a big chunk of change and less work?
I don't know. We've always tried hard to, let's see here. Brigham Young, who is a prophet for our church, talked about how if you need something, then just get it. You know, don't make sure it's a quality good thing, and something that will last and that you value, right? And so we've lived by that, but we've also always tried really hard to keep those types of things that we want to a minimum, you know. And so, because like we'll buy art that we love, or you know, we'll do the things that we really love, it's made it so that, this is hard, I'm trying to figure out how to say this without it sounding pretentious. It's very much our ideal that we're trying to work towards. We're not perfect at it, but we really value the idea of enjoying simple things, right? I say that, and it's like, if you were to come into our life, you'd be like, you don't value simple things, you know. But at the same time, you know, I love ridiculously leather bound books. You know, I have this Sangorskian suit clip. Yeah. Woo! It's like, it's not simple, but at the same time it is, you know. And we try and keep our ideal is that we're not out like just blowing money on all kinds of crazy stuff all the time. And so I believe how ideals work, and this is something that's really important to me right now in this age where we're moving into a time where relativism is a more prominent idea. And I think that there's good to be had in that. But I think that one of the problems that's happened with this movement into relativism is we've gotten rid of ideals. And I think because we misunderstood ideals, I think that the more of the postmodern thinker believed that ideals were things that we tried to achieve in this life, and that people, because we could never achieve an ideal, we should get rid of all ideals, right? And incredulity toward a meta narrative is what they say, Lyotard. But I don't think that. I think ideals are guides that help us see, like, oh, this is something to be working in this direction. It's never something to be achieved. It's something to help guide us, to help us know if we're on track. And so our ideal is valuing simple things, you know, and things that are just leading a more simple life where we're able to have more resources to help people and do stuff like that. So while yes, you come in and you'll see you know, these books that are nice, or like art, like stuff like that that we love, at the same time we're always trying hard to like lower our budget every month and get it, like live on a budget and do these different things. So when we sold it, we needed to adjust, like that's when we were like, okay, this is kind of game time to see how much we really value these ideals that we have or not, you know, and trying to
That's awesome. It puts the ideals to the test. You're like, okay, now we remove some of the previous limitations. Like, how do we now hold the ideals? I love that.
And it's hard to even talk about. Like, I feel like cringy talking about it, even like it's like you know, we're so good at this. We're not. It's things that we value and we're trying hard to do, and we are getting better at all the time. And it makes me happy that we're getting better at these things that we value, you know. But that is something that we value and we've tried hard to get at. So you ask how it changed us and how we manage it. It's that we had the ideal of trying to live a simple life that's full of connection and meaning, and money is not necessary for any of those things. And so money is a tool to try and accomplish the stuff that we believe in, is how we view it, and get some of the things like that Brigham Young talked about. It's like, it is good to have beauty around you and good things like these books that will last a long time, and my notes can go down, you know, in them. The kids can interact with them and take their notes and pass them on to their kids, and they'll all be able to see how we all interacted with this book and these ideas and these thinkers, right? And so it has meaning is what's important. Anything we buy, we try and buy it because it has meaning, not because it makes us. I always ask myself, what am I looking to feel from this? Like, if I get a car, do I imagine myself driving up and seeing everyone looking at me? And like, is that the thing that brings me dopamine and excitement? Or is it like imagining my kids one day opening up my nice version of Lord of the Rings and seeing like, whoa, Tolkien like believed these things, and look at these ideas that my dad drew from it. And I feel that, but I also feel this, and I'm going to take these notes. And like, that feels exciting to me. And that's the meaning I derive from it. And so it's like, I'm willing to spend more money on that.
Same. I love that. Love that.
Yeah.
I'm curious. Well, just because so many people, they want to have the experience you guys earned and created, but having done it now, do you feel like it fundamentally changed your relationship with money or with business or life? Was there a switch? I know a lot of people, even people who are earning great incomes, still worry about money. In fact, I personally know people who have tens of millions of dollars and still worry about money. I'm curious, was there a shift, or did it all stay the same? It was just a different experience.
No, it's kind of stayed the same. Well, not stayed. That's not accurate. It has given us more clarity, right? That's something I chase a lot, is trying to get more clarity in life. And it's given us more clarity around how to understand what money is. That's why it was so important to us to have those moments when we were in college, and it was rough but also beautiful. We would go out to the parks and really enjoy ourselves, and we'd sit around a lot and talk about ideas, and we would, all these wonderful experiences that we look back on and really value. And so we had a moment where during COVID, where it was like okay, this could be it, because California locked down. All of our supply chain is in California, and no one in California could make anything, right? If they went into their factory and made stuff, they would be put out of business. And so we had a moment where we were like, this is it. This is how it ends. You know, we'll spend all the money that we have trying to keep the business alive as long as we can and get the employees going. And I remember we were driving up our hill. Our house is up a hill, up a road. We were driving up that hill, and Elle and I were talking about it, and we both just said, we're okay losing everything. You know, we have we would be happy in a cave, is what we said. You know, like we have the things that we need to be happy, and so let's do the best we can to keep it afloat. But if we don't, that's okay. And so that's a very tangible way that we view money differently now. Is it's a way to help us accomplish the things we believe in and solve problems, and help us accomplish things that we're trying to accomplish. And so that's why meaning is important in that equation for us, because our house helps us bring meaning to our family, and, you know, these different types of things. Right. And so they make sense to have that and to have one that we really value. But also, you know, if we lose our house, it's okay, because our family is what really brings us the meaning. It doesn't, the house amplifies that, but it's not the house itself. It's what it enables us to be doing. Exactly. So
I love it. It's just a tool. It's a neutral tool. It's an instrument for the things that matter most to us. Jared, that's so. Hey, I gotta roll here in a second, but I want to ask you. This is a perfect role in there for family. You took your kids on a big old adventure.
Yeah. So we, my two oldest, they were 10 and 12 at the time, and we had someone. How long do you have before you got to get off?
I got like 6 minutes. Sorry.
All right, I can do that. So we had a friend who'd done the John Muir Trail a few times invite us to go on the John Muir Trail. I think he was joking, but I accepted. And the John Muir Trail is around 215 miles, 211 miles, something like that, through the Sierras. And so we had to do extra. We had to do 260 miles is what we ended up doing. And we started up north and ended at Mount Whitney. And it was huge. A 10-year-old and a 12-year-old, we were gone for almost a month backpacking 260 miles. But it was a life change. You know, we talk about narrative psychology and transformations and all that type of stuff. And it was the coolest thing I could have done to help my kids feel that deeply. So they know the process now, and they refer to it often when they're going through hard things. They're like, oh, this is like the first week of the JMT. You know, it's like that first week they were bawling, you know, like Solomon, he was 10, our boy, and then Lucy was our 12-year-old. And Solomon, like the first day we went 10 miles and he was like a walking zombie. He could not talk, but it was so sweet because it humbled him so much that, like, I remember he was trying to get over this log. It was like a foot high and he couldn't lift his legs high enough to get over it because he was so tired. And I helped him over, and he just looked up at me so sincerely and he said, thank you so much, Dad, for helping me, you know. And it was like our first day, and I was questioning the decision to bring them on this trail big time. But they both laid down on the side of the trail. We're a quarter mile from our campsite that night, and they just both started bawling, and they're talking about how hard it was. And they did not know what they were getting into. As much as we tried to hike, you can't know what you're getting into. And that's a great lesson for life too, right? We have things like that all the time. But then they continued the process, just like life. If you jump into things and you don't allow yourself to quit, just like the JMT, we didn't have the chance to quit ever, right? It just wasn't an option. And so after that first week, they got their trail legs, they say, and then they became some of the fastest hikers on the trail. And they're just zipping around. 14-mile days was like nothing to them. And it was just a huge adventure. And by the end, Solomon, my goal for them, we have a big goal to teach our children self-efficacy in different areas, right? And so my goal for them was to have self-efficacy in the belief, the lowest level of Maslow's hierarchy, right? That they could survive in the wild. I wanted them to have the belief that they could survive in the wild. And so by the end, Solomon, our 10-year-old, said, I feel like I could live out here. And both of them said that. You know, we were walking down our last 2 miles and kind of talking about the trip, and they both said that. And the thing that was really interesting about it, so they learned the whole epic pattern, right? You know, the climax and the you know, being out there in the desert, the whole thing. They learned the whole epic pattern, and it was a really cool thing. By the end, what happened that was really interesting, we got home and they would just do all the things that they used to complain about so much, like doing the dishes or all their chores. And what was interesting is at that point, asking them to do the dishes was literally the hardest thing that they had ever done, right? Like if you think about our kids, is like, I've never asked them to do anything that hard before at all. So you're asking them to do this. It's like, dude, you just asked me to do the hardest thing. Of course I'm going to push back on that. After the JMT, it was like, oh, dishes, like that's a delight. I get to sit here and relax and whatever.
Exactly.
And so it made all of it so much easier, all these big chores. But it was really cool, and they look back on it often, that narrative arc. They've applied it over and over, and I help them do that, right? I'll when they're going through something hard, I'll help them liken it to that process. Now they do it on their own, and it's been really life-changing for them to have such a clear understanding of the epic pattern and how it applies to our life in starting a business, and your friendships, and the calling at church. Everything follows this same arc, and they experienced it so directly. And now they can know you just got to persevere through it.
Yeah,
exactly. Yep.
And the thing I love about those big epic adventures with my kids as well is it's a memory that you have now for the rest of your life together. That's something remember and cherish, but also draw back on.
It's
live a better life.
Dostoevsky again, right? The childhood memories are have the power to save us.
And if we'll be more intentional and more deliberate about creating these memories, we even get that much more power.
Yep, that's right.
Jared, thanks, man. This has been gold, brother. So appreciate it.
All right. Well, thank you for having me.